Good evening. It's 7 p.m. and this meeting is called to order. Ms. Bechtel, please do the statement of compliance.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, notice of this meeting has been properly advertised in the Daily Record and Suburban Trends. Its agenda has been posted at the appropriate locations, and a copy has been filed with the Pequannock Township Clerk. Mr. Cerisi? Here. Mrs. Meyer? Here. Mrs. Osmansky? Here. Mr. Prezioso?
Here.
Mrs. Shenton?
Here.
I note Mr. Singer is absent. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Siracusa? Here. Mrs. Quigley? We have a quorum, ma'am.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't have a report this evening, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Charleston.
Thank you, Ms. Quigley, and good evening, everyone. We have a couple of very exciting, as all of our recognitions are, but we have some student recognitions today. So I'd like to start with Mr. Portis, if I may. Mr. Portis?
Thank you, Dr. Charleston and the board. Welcome, everyone. I have a teacher recognition and then two different student teams I would like to recognize tonight. Teacher preparation programs do a great deal to prepare young people for one of the most important professions on the planet, and they provide metrics to help us gauge an emerging teacher's preparedness level. There is no metric, however, to measure a person's heart and sense of commitment to a community. Nicole Kuzer, in her brief time as a long-term leave replacement at Hillview, has demonstrated that she possesses those intangibles and wants to make an impact beyond the classroom. She tutors students in our Title I program, provides home instruction, and frequently attends community events. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else could hear. There's a train on the way. Her unflagging energy is inspiring, and we are recognizing her tonight for her efforts with the Starlight Children's Foundation. The Starlight Children's Foundation's mission is to bring joy and comfort to children and families whose children are hospitalized. She championed the program for children in our schools to design fun and colorful hospital gowns. For every design submitted, Michael's donated $25, capping at $250,000, and the winning design will be chosen to be used in the 2018 Starlight gown throughout the United States and other countries. So great was the response to this that she had to request permission to exceed the submission size restrictions. The response from their coordinator to Ms. Kuzer was, "Thank you, all caps, so much for reaching out to us and sharing this wonderful story of the whole community rallying together for Gavin. You can absolutely send in a larger file of all scanned submissions." Thank you indeed, Ms. Kuzer, and keep up the great work. Ms. Kuzer. Now I'd like to call up the PAWS math team of Lila Finnegan, Liam McDonald, and Sophia Kletcha. So come on up, and I'm going to say a few words about the three of you. In our pause block, Mrs. Tartaglia's class was challenged with the essential question, how can we rename mixed numbers and improper fractions? To that end, her students worked to expand and challenge each other in their understanding of and fluency working with fractions and mixed numbers. As a culminating activity, students developed a matching fraction activity game similar to dominoes, but with a twist. The 12 cards needed to be matched in a specific order to create a 3x3 square puzzle. As an extension of number talks, students worked with partners to create a list of fraction/mixed number pairs. The challenge was to be sure that there were no other equivalent fractions on any other cards so that the puzzle could only go together one way. They completed the game board, cut it apart into the 12 squares, each split into fourths, and challenged other teams to complete the matching puzzle. I tried it. It's really hard. The team of Lila Finnegan, Liam McDonald, and Sophia Kletcher created the first puzzle and worked to help other teams as they worked. When Mrs. Tartaglia asked them if they wanted to be challenged, she received a resounding yes. These talented young students demonstrated not only great ability and teamwork, but also the mindset that they embrace a challenge and defy you to set limits on what they can achieve. We are recognizing them tonight both for their talent and, more importantly, how they were able to apply it with their hard work. Congratulations. I got one more after this, Rich. I've adopted the strategy of finding the middle camera and just staring at it. Christian Iacuzo, Dante Mangarelli, Jillian Nafee, Kylie McGowan, and Ryan Moore also worked on the Pause project, but did so in an entirely different way. Come on up. And there is more. Right here, guys. Using teamwork, content knowledge, and loads of creativity, they created splats using Google Slides. Much like the previous group, they generated content to challenge their peers. Their work now plays a critical role in the assessment cycle, a realm once dominated by teachers alone, the one that we are now finding is even more effective when students play a part. The students described a splat as a fun tool for adding fractions. There are two kinds of splats, either a mixed number or a whole number, but tonight we're going to talk briefly about the mixed number splat. By the way, this information is going to be on the website, and their project is on the website, as is a picture of their puzzle. Let's say the total number is 3 3/4. You can have a whole number or mixed number showing that that's not covered by your splats. Then you can make your splats, which can be as many splats as you want. However, they must all equal 3 3/4 when combined with what is showing. When deciding what to use, you should use a whole and two different fractions. If you have two splats, the total amount missing must be split in half. Each splat has to equal the same amount. If that sounds really complicated, it's because it is. But through their outstanding communication and clarity, the project is actually very user-friendly. For that accomplishment and much more, I am proud to recognize this team of scholars. Congratulations. All right, we'll get our picture up there, guys. Shake their hands first. So shake their hands first. And now I turn the podium to Mr. Hazler.
Thank you, Mr. Portis. I'm beginning to wonder if I should have graduated 4th grade. I'm still trying to figure out that splats activity. That's awesome. And congratulations, guys. PV is proud to recognize several of our students this evening, and every time I'm up here, I'm always in awe of the talents of our students in so many ways. Our 3 students today are recognized for different things. The first 2 students are recognized for the Daughters of American Revolution essay contest that they both entered in on their choice. The Daughters of the American Revolution sponsors an essay contest each year for students in grades 5 through 8. The topic of the essay for this year was World War I, Remembering the War to End All Wars. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the end of the Great War. So the topic was, imagine you are living in 1918. State where you are living and how the end of the war will impact your life. Discuss the pros and cons of the changes of this war that introduced to society and how you imagine those changes will impact the United States in years to come. PV was so proud to have two students, one in grade 8 and one in grade 7, enter the contest and both receive accolades for doing so. First up, and this family's 2 for 2 for this evening, is Gavin Mangarelli. Come on up, Gavin. Gavin's grandfather told Gavin about his great-grandmother who lived through major changes after World War I. Gavin learned about the jobs women had to perform while their husbands were away, earning their rights, and about advancements in technology. Gavin was inspired by what his family members had to go through and decided to write an essay for the contest. Gavin's essay shared the life of Edith Chapman, Gavin's great-great-grandmother. He talked about how her father went away to war and she had to help support her family by taking on jobs, particularly as munitionettes, inspecting bullets that would be used for the war. The essay went on to describe the emotion she felt when women earned their right to vote, when soldiers did not return home from war, and when the United Nations became a unifying force for world peace. One of the challenges of learning history is how to make it relevant today. It doesn't get much more relevant than learning from a family member who experienced it as a part of history. Congratulations, Gavin. Stay there, Gavin, because we're going to have Jessica come up. Jessica Ziffe from grade 7. Is Jessica here? There she is. Jessica was influenced by her English teacher, Mr. Stefano, to enter the contest. Her essay was also about World War I and the impact it had on the members of society. She portrayed the character of a woman and discussed the impact of women's rights. She also talked about the progressive era and the Gilded Age that was occurring at the same time. Jessica felt the best part of the project was researching all about World War I, since it was a topic that she hadn't yet learned about. She credits Mr. Hackett, her social studies teacher, for helping her out by teaching her some mini lessons on topics that hadn't been covered, and for Mr. Stefano for proofreading her essay. Jessica's essay was chosen to move on to the state level, and she sent me an email this afternoon finding out that she has taken 3rd place. So congratulations, Jessica. So Gavin and Jessica, congratulations for your participation in this contest, but also for challenging yourself to be great writers and learning beyond the classroom. I think it's totally outstanding. So job well done. Each year, students from the Pequannock Township School District enter into the Morris County Council of Education Association's poster contest. Try and say that 3 times fast. Winners of the poster contest have their artwork printed in the association's yearly calendar and have their artwork on display at the Rockaway Mall as part of the county's celebration of art. The theme of this year's contest was "In My Public School, We Take Care of Each Other." Students had to design a poster using that slogan to describe their school. This year, we are proud to announce that Megan Hall, a grade 6 student at PV, had her artwork selected for this contest. Her artwork was entitled, "In My Public School, We Care About Each Other by Supporting and Encouraging One Another." She was creative in using Scrabble pieces from the board game to spell out supporting and encouraging, and it was floating on water. Megan says that she enjoys PV a lot and enjoys the opportunity to work with different students and teachers every day. She enjoys art as a hobby, taking painting classes in the past, and hopes to continue her artwork in the future. Megan will be presented with a professionally framed copy of her painting and a monetary gift at the opening ceremonies of the Rockaway Mall Art Show on April 9th at 6:30 p.m., if anybody would like to attend. She was one of 12 students throughout the county that was selected, so it's pretty prestigious in what she did. So congratulations, Megan. Come on up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hazler and Mr. Portis and everyone for coming out tonight who was recognized. It's certainly one of the fun and exciting things that we get to do here as administration and the Board of Education. Let me read a couple of things from my report before I get to Abby's report. Kindergarten registration. Registration for kindergarten for September continues. Parents of students that will be 5 by October 1st should contact Colleen Smith in Central Administration to make that appointment. Currently, we are at 108 students registered for next year. Is Mr. Hazler still here? So on March 5th at 8 o'clock, Mr. Hazler is moderating, and these are in his words, I put this in quotes, a pretty big Twitter chat called Learn LAP, Learn Like a Pirate. It is a nationwide chat based on one of the pirate books in Dave Burge's publishing series written by Paul Solars called Learn Like a Pirate. The topic of the chat will be learning in a culture of curiosity. And to Mr. Hazler, this is certainly a great opportunity for you, the district, and the staff, and we hope that anybody who's interested can join Mr. Hazler in his professional development opportunity. In order to find that, Rich, we just have to Google #LearnLAP. R. I know that we tease really in our district because we have taken Twitter, I don't want to say to the next level, but we use it extensively, not only to promote the district, but for professional development, and our principals and supervisors have really taken the lead on doing that. So kudos to them, and kudos in this case to Mr. Hazler for moderating a chat that will be attended by educators throughout the entire country. So well done, Rich. I put this on the website today, the Seal by Literacy. We're pleased to share that we have 13 students earning this distinction this year. And we are very proud of the hard work and determination these students exhibited in taking this test and their willingness to keep trying. Our student success could not have occurred without the hard work of the World Language Department and Dr. Sheridan, who is a supervisor of humanities. Of the 13 earning the Seal, 6 are actually non-native speakers. And right here to my right, Ms. Quigley is most proud of her son Dylan, who is one of the 13 students to earn this distinction as well. And we will recognize all the students at upcoming meetings. So congratulations, Ms. Quigley. Well done. Now when your son talks to you in Spanish, you won't know what he's saying. The Allied Health Institute, the open house for the Allied Health Institute, which was held this past Thursday here at the high school, went very well. There were over 100 parents in attendance. We currently have 48 applications in hand, which certainly we believe much more are coming. Most of the people at the open house had not applied yet. In addition, Ms. Quigley, myself, and Ms. Bechtel attended the Chilton Advisory Board meeting last Tuesday to present the Allied Health Institute. It was very well received by their board, and we are looking forward as we start to see which students will be accepted into the Institute. Cyberbullying and digital citizenship. The high school and middle school scheduled a presentation through the Community Partners for Hope by Sergeant Tom Rich of the Summit Police Department on cyberbullying and digital citizenship for April 12th. In addition, there'll be a very important evening presentation or parent university at First Reformed Church Friendship Hall on April 12th. We'll post this information to the district page as well. I met 2 weeks back with HSA presidents. Items on the agenda included school security, school performance reports, digital citizenship, and cybersecurity. Peter Cook and Matt Reiner presented on digital citizenship and cybersecurity. I asked Mr. Reiner to present the same on digital citizenship at an upcoming board meeting, and he is currently scheduled to present at the March 12th meeting. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Abby and get her report. Abby?
So this Wednesday is our annual blood drive, and it's from 10:45 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. in the auditorium, and we're just trying to encourage as many people as possible to come and donate. And the next topic, tomorrow and Thursday, we're having student safety and security grade level assemblies, and the purpose of these are to discuss look-fors, how and what to report, how to respond in an emergency, drill procedures, and school security. And the students will have the opportunity to talk with Ron Lucas and Officer Cicchetti about any questions they have. On Wednesday morning, we're doing a moment of silence in remembrance of the students and faculty who lost their lives in the tragedy. And another idea we had was to write letters and make posters that we could send to the school to show our support.
Abby, if you don't mind, could I ask you some questions about that? So Can you kind of tell me how this came about? Was this a student decision in conjunction with leadership? How did you guys come to the fact that you're going to do this? Because you know there's this walkout planned on March 14th. Is this the students' reaction instead of walking out to do something like this instead?
Yeah, that's what we're planning to do instead of the walkout.
Anybody have any other questions for Abby at all? Abby is very intimidating when she interviews, yes. Very tough. Abby, thank you so much. Appreciate it. The last comment I have is on school security. Last night I posted an updated security letter on several of the security measures that we have in place. Though I and the board are aware that parents, staff, and community members want more information regarding additional security measures not mentioned in the letter, we simply cannot share, as these measures must be kept confidential so that they remain effective. That being said, the Board of Education is planning to have a discussion under new business tonight on the feasibility of arming the Director of Security. This is not an agenda item and no action will be taken tonight. Therefore, the appropriate time for community members to speak on school security or this issue is at the second opportunity for public comment. The board welcomes comments and is cognizant that emotions are running high for all. We believe that there is no right or wrong answer to this issue. Some will argue for more police or armed security in schools, and others are against it. Please be advised that this has been a topic of conversation with the Board of Education since I was principal at the high school, and the issue of arming the Director of Security came up before the events in Florida occurred. The next Board of Education meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 12th at 7 o'clock here at the high school in the auditorium, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Charleston. Are there any questions regarding that report? Okay, we're going to move along on the agenda. I do believe we have a presentation.
Yep. Yep. So we have Ms. Peterson here. Ms. Peterson is the Morris. You have two counties, don't you, Ms. Peterson? So she is the Morris and Essex School Board's representative. And Ms. Peterson is here to talk about the due superintendent evaluation. So this is training for the Board of Education. And she has a PowerPoint, which I shared with the board. And the packet here, I don't think I shared that with you. I may have done it electronically, but it's a packet coming around. Abby, if you want to stay, you can. You never know. Stay close.
No, those are yours. Should I give you extra?
Yeah, I think.
You can keep them if you need them, or I'll take them back.
Okay. And I, like I said, I had emailed the PowerPoint to the board members. So those are for yours to keep. Yes. All right, Ms. Peterson, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to come here tonight and work with the board. And I'd love when I get the chance to hear your student recognition. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of that. You know, we always tell boards that you should stay focused on student achievement. So when we actually get the opportunity to hear it and see it in action, it, you know, really kind of makes it all worthwhile. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about the new superintendent's evaluation tool that New Jersey school boards rolled out at workshop. So that was the first time, if any of you were able to see it then, that we made it available. We had a training in February, and then we also did a webinar. So this same presentation that I'm doing to you live in person here is also on our website as a webinar going through this same PowerPoint. So the process was really a joint effort between New Jersey school boards and then the superintendents, their equivalent association of the school administrators. So there are like 3 or 4 of us from each organization, and we worked together for over 2 years. Took a lot of dialogue, a lot of back and forth. There are a lot of things that didn't come, you know, smoothly without there being a lot of conversation, but the final product is something that we both are really proud of and feel that this really does represent the work that superintendents do. So, you know, while I say what's new and I have a list of different things here, I really could simplify that by saying basically everything is new in the tool, that we changed it almost completely from top to bottom. And then in addition to that, added another step to the process and added a new template for that, the summary report that the board president writes. So I'm just going to kind of take you through what that looks like. So you can see what the standards, there were always have been 6 standards in the superintendent's evaluation that he is evaluated against. So those are what they were in the current tool. And you can see they're more aligned, kind of the functionality lines of personnel, finance, instruction. And now it's more kind of looking in depth at other areas that the superintendent, kind of like a bigger picture of looking at the mission, the vision, the values, professional norms. So kind of expanding, we all know that those are the types of things that superintendents now, have always been working on, but now it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of their job, and making sure that we have a tool then that reflects that. So the biggest driver of the superintendent's evaluation tool are the professional leadership standards. They're national standards. They used to be called ISLIC standards, and now they're the professional standards for educational leaders. So they just came out with new ones in 2015. But these standards are not just for superintendents. They are geared for any educational administration, so it could be supervisors, assistant superintendents. So as we look through it, while a lot of it was relevant for the work that superintendents did, a lot of it would be like too far in the weeds for a board member to be evaluating a superintendent on. And there were 10 or 11 of those standards. So we took what was relevant, did some combining, and the end result was the 6 standards that we saw up there. But we not only used those standards, we also looked at tools from other states. We probably had at least about 20 other states that we were able to get what their superintendent's evaluation tool looked like, and use that to help guide the work that we did. We looked at the superintendent's job description, the current tool that we were using, and also looked at the board's role and the relationship of the superintendent with the board, and in those professional standards there was nothing about governance. So we felt, as we looked at the relationship between the board and the superintendent, that that's an important aspect of that job, and it's important that that be included in the evaluation as well. So again, the standards, we wanted to have something that really kind of kept the board focused on looking at kind of structured standards, something that's measurable, something that you could, as you talked about areas, say where strength or focus was needed, that it's based on something. It's based on concrete standards that the superintendent can be held accountable to achieving. So we also looked at the rating scale. So there's what the current rating scale looks like. And probably the area that we had the most discussion about in the new ones was the third one, area for growth. Even when it first came out, and we did a sneak preview this summer to board members, we had like a summer leadership training. It was called something different. And everyone at the training felt like it was too confusing what it was before, so we kind of went back to the drawing board and came up with some more conversation. That initially, as we looked at the current one and saw that the middle option was needs improvement, we felt that that was too negative for kind of the middle option, and wanted to look at something that more demonstrated the fact that if you are new in the job and need to just increase your skills in an area, and that there is area for growth, that it's not necessarily a negative, but just that you are still developing and gaining more skills in that area. So just wanted to kind of help, give something that would better demonstrate that. And then also wanted to clarify for the last one, not observed, that it really is, for a lot of times it's confusion whether that's a negative or a positive, and it's really neither one. It basically just says, hey, I didn't get a chance to see that. I don't know if it's good or it's not bad because I haven't seen it. So it's a rating that just suggests just that. So as we look at the timeline for this school year now, you have the option to use the tool that you have been using in the past, or you can use the new tool. We recognize that the evaluation cycle starts on July 1st. It's a whole year process. The superintendent's new work year starts July 1. So if we just rolled this out in October, it's fair that you should know by July 1 what you're going to be held accountable for. So that's why we give you the option. One of the things we're finding as superintendents are seeing this new tool and saying, hey, this really does better reflects the work that I'm doing. And even though I'm just seeing it now, I would prefer to be evaluated against that because it really does do a better job of capturing the work that I'm doing. So that's why we say that for this year, it needs to be a conversation between the board and the superintendent. Fairly quick conversation because the process is starting here pretty soon. So if you haven't had it already, to determine which tool you're going to be using. And in most superintendent's contracts, it says that by July 30th, the board and the superintendent will determine which tool they're going to use for the year. So like I said, so it's important that you have that conversation for this year, and then starting with the 2018-19 school year, the new tool will be the only one that we'll have available for your use. The question I got asked, I did the same presentation last week to the Morris County superintendents, and someone had said, well, do we have to use this tool? And the answer is no, that you can use one you make up yourself, any other tool you found. The important piece that has to happen is that the board and the superintendent have to agree that this is the tool that you're using. So as I'll quickly take you through the process itself, just kind of that reminder that if any of you have a relative that works in the district, you can't take part in the evaluation process at all. Like people say, well, can I sit in on this meeting? Or if I can't write it, can I at least listen? And the answer is no, you can't be part of it whatsoever if you have a relative that works in the district. So one of the things that guides the work that we do as we evaluate the superintendent is the law, that there are statute and code about what needs to be in the superintendent's evaluation. So in statute, it says that the board has to evaluate the superintendent at least once a year, has to be in writing. The board and the superintendent will meet to discuss the findings. It will be based on goals, objectives, responsibilities, and criteria prescribed by the State Board of Education. Now, maybe it's about 6 months ago now, the State Board officially adopted those national standards as New Jersey School Board, as the state of New Jersey standards. So the state did adopt those standards. There is a legal deadline of July 1st that the board is supposed to be done with the entire process, and that the superintendent's performance report should be prepared by a majority of the board, and shall include areas of strength, areas needing improvement, recommendations for growth, and should be based on student progress. And then there should be a summary conference meeting that shall include a majority of the total board membership. One of the things that's new coming up effective July 2018 is now that there are now going to be QSAC requirements as part of this. We would have a lot of boards that finished or did the board self-evaluation but didn't finish it by July 1st. I have some that are still finishing from last year. And so, the question would be asked, so what happens? And, we always kind of used to say, well, there isn't really a board police, but now there is, at least for this aspect of it. The QSAC is now going to hold districts accountable. It was always in the code that new board members had to have training within the first 6 months of taking office on the superintendent's evaluation process. So for those new board members that went to the required new board member orientation within those first 6 months, they were able to meet that requirement. But now we're seeing, starting July 1, that there's now 7 points associated with that. So you have to have a policy, a contract, and then your new board members also have to have training. So for you having me out here tonight, if it's reflected in your board minutes that I was here to do the superintendent's evaluation process, that would be a way for you as a board to have met that requirement as well. And now there is also points associated with boards finishing the superintendent's evaluation by July 1st. So, we say to boards as we think about CUSAC as a whole and think about things that sometimes we don't necessarily have a lot of control over in terms of points or losing points, we'd hate to think that boards can control these things and that would give up points to the district for not doing your work and not doing it on time and meeting the requirements that the state has set out for you. So as we look at an evaluation tool, these are kind of the things that we said make for an effective tool that makes sure that for documentation that there's multiple sources of evidence, looked at the ratings, criteria, the importance of written comments, the fact that when the board evaluates the superintendent, it's based on the majority opinion, and that how important these face-to-face conferences or communication are to help develop that common understanding. So kind of laid all of it out in a flow chart, because I said basically this is not just a one-time sit down and evaluate the superintendent, it's a year-long process. So that year-long process starts with the district goal setting. So now you have a strategic plan. So we now have kind of a framework of where our district goals are going to come from. So the district goals are those one-year goals that we identify that are in the superintendent's evaluation. And then the administration gives you action plans. So we're setting the what for the year. They're helping determine or letting us know how they're going to accomplish that. There should be a mechanism in place to get updates on how we're doing with those goals. And then this new step in the process, up on top there's the superintendent evaluation pre-conference. So we're now saying before we sit down, before anybody starts filling out an evaluation, let's sit down first and have a face-to-face between the board and the superintendent and come to a common understanding. Where are we? How are we going? What have we accomplished for this year? Making sure that we all kind of have that understanding before we do go ahead and get started with the evaluation. Now, a comment that I get asked is, should this be an open session? Should this be in closed session? How does this work? And if you were to get like progress updates or informational updates, it would be in public, but any evaluative conversations that you would have then would be in closed session. And then, the way New Jersey School Board's online process starts is it starts with the superintendent. So in about the next couple weeks here, New Jersey School Board sends an email to all the superintendents in the state at the same time that says, okay, the evaluation tool's open, here's the link, you can click on it and get started. So this year then the superintendent will also have to select whether they're going to use the old tool or whether they're going to use the new tool. So that's kind of where that choice gets made and gets started. So then the superintendent will input the goals, his assessment of the goals, comments he wants the board members to see. And then one of the things that's changed with the new tool is then as soon as he hit submit, then all of the board members got an email from New Jersey School Board saying, okay, superintendent's done, it's time for you to log on and do your part. Now we've added a 48-hour window in there to give the superintendent time to say, oops, forgot to say that, or I wish I would have added that in, or, kind of had thoughts of things that, may have wanted to have been included or taken out. So there will now be a 48-hour window. Then each board member goes in, individually completes it. Then New Jersey School Board compiles those individual evaluations into one summary evaluation document. That's anonymous, and then the board meets to review that summary document knowing that the compilation has everyone's opinions in it. The superintendent's evaluation is supposed to be reflective of the majority opinion. So the board needs to meet and discuss and determine what is that majority opinion based on the compilation that has everyone's opinions. And then there is a summary narrative that's written, and then the board and the superintendent sit down to review that summary narrative together. And all of that should be done by July 1st. So it's a little hard to read here, but in your book, so we have a suggested calendar. So my advice to you would be to take the July 1st deadline and work backwards and say, and kind of look at when your meetings are in June, when your meetings are in May, so that you don't have to schedule extra meetings, and say, okay, whatever your last meeting is in June, make sure that's when you have the summary conference. Then the meeting before that is you should be then kind of be reviewing the summary narrative. And the meeting before that, making sure you're going through the compilation. So kind of, look at that and kind of put a calendar together for yourselves based on what you need to have done when in order to meet that July 1st deadline and not have unnecessary or additional meetings to accomplish that. I've already talked about the evaluation pre-conference, the importance of it. So again, we're setting the stage for kind of a common understanding before we start the evaluation process. So here we're getting into the evaluation itself. So just wanted to show you that it's still the two parts, the progress toward the district goals. So that part is no different. Like I said, it starts with the superintendent inputting the goals, providing a self-assessment, comments for the board members to see. Then when the board members log on, they see the superintendent's information, put their own rating on, and then the comments that they provide are for their fellow board members to see to help their fellow board members understand why they gave the rating that they did. Okay, so here's where everything is different. So just wanted to help you understand how it's changed inside of the standards. So what we have now done for each standard is help give a definition to the ratings unique to each standard. So before we just had one rating at the very beginning and said, okay, commendable means this, satisfactory means this. Now we're saying for this standard, this is what exemplary means, to help board members have a better common understanding as you are providing a rating of it meaning the same thing to each one of you. We now are adding that section that says sample resources for standard 1. So as you are evaluating the superintendent on the mission, vision, and core values, we now have provided you some samples of some things you might want to look at to help you determine whether that, how that has been accomplished or not. But importantly, then underneath it is the next part where it says superintendent selected evidence for standard 1. So before, the superintendent provided the input on the goals and the superintendent was done. This time, part of this discussion we had with this new tool is the superintendents on the committee with us from ASA were thinking that perhaps the superintendent should do a complete self-evaluation, fill out all the standards, fill out, everything. And we said, well, we think their input is important, but it needs to be clear that this is the board member's job to do this evaluation. So superintendents now will be able to provide links to you to documents that they would like you to look at to help you as you go through and fill out each standard. If there are links that they think would be valuable to you to help you assess this standard, you will be able to click on those right while you're in the standard here. And then similar to the last time, there are indicators under each standard to take that standard and break it down into more meaningful pieces to help you understand what, the gist of the standard. So here again is an area that we got into a lot of conversation with the superintendents about. Their kind of thought was, well, maybe we shouldn't have the board members. If the overall intent is to look at how we did on the standard, perhaps we shouldn't have board members putting a mark in the boxes under each indicator. So our thought was we didn't want people to just jump right down to them. Like if you didn't have to put an X in the boxes of each indicator, people might not read them, might not look at them, would just go right down to the bottom of the standard and check a box. So we wanted this to be a meaningful, thoughtful process and make sure that you did read everything. Make sure that you did understand what that overall evaluation was that you were giving. So for that reason, we left the checking of the boxes in each one of the indicators as well. But what's new now is that there is an overall rating given to the standard. Before, we used to just check the indicators under the standards, but you were never asked then to give an overall, once you finished all the indicators, you were never asked to give an overall rating on the standards. So if we're saying that this is a standards-based assessment and the standards are a major portion of this, then it would seem logical then that we should be giving an overall rating on each standard, and that would be some meaningful information to the superintendent. And then again, comments under each section. So I discussed the next steps briefly before when I went through the flow chart. So again, we compile the individual responses, the board sits down, meets to look at the compilation, come up with what the majority opinion is, and then write an annual performance report. And to me, this is one of the kind of the places where there was the biggest variety. Is I would go from district to district and look at or see sometimes what this annual performance looked like. There was no consistency. Superintendent's evaluations were so different. So now this is a way to say, if you want to use this, this is a way that you can be sure that your evaluation stays focused on the goals, your evaluation stays focused on the standards, and is a tool for you to use so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time there's a new president and trying to figure out, what this summary evaluation report should look like. So this is kind of a sample then of what that template looks like. So if you think about it, you and the board, so the board will sit down, you will have the compilation in front of you, and then you'll have this template that's blank. It will have, goal number 1, and then you would check whether the board's overall thought was, what the overall rating was, and then you'd come up with supporting remarks, and you'd do that for each goal. And then the same thing now for each standard. So the board would then give the superintendent an overall rating for each standard with comments to support that. So the superintendent is now getting from the board an evaluation that tells him how the board feels he did on the goals and how the board feels he did on each one of the 6 standards. And then you'll also then have the opportunity, and again, this is to help us if we think back to what the legal requirements were. We had to show progress toward goals, we had to show areas of strength, we had to show areas where more professional growth was needed. This is helping us fulfill our legal requirements and keeping it based on the standards. And then the summary conference that the board has with the superintendent, like I said, it needs to be done by July 1st. We suggest that the board share the narrative with the superintendent at least 48 hours prior to that sit-down conference so that the superintendent has the opportunity to read it over and come and have a meaningful discussion with the board. And I know sometimes it's not always just, I know in going to different boards that not all of them have the full board sit down with the superintendent, and just want to reiterate the importance of that. It said it in the statute that is what is supposed to happen. But, we talked about the fact that the superintendent's evaluation only reflects the majority opinion. If I'm the minority, one of the rights that I have is that I don't lose the right to be heard. So if my opinion is not in the superintendent's formal written evaluation, this is my chance to make my thoughts heard. So if we're sitting at that summary conference and we give the superintendent an evaluation that says the goal number 1 was achieved, and I only think it was partially achieved, that's not reflected in his evaluation, but I do have the chance at this time then to tell him that and why I think that. So that's a right then that you have as the minority to express that. I'm just showing you, that where it is on our website is your online access. And then just, kind of to leave you with a few thoughts that it's not a once-a-year event. That's the superintendent. We looked at kind of that timeline, that it starts in July and is an ongoing process. As a board, we sometimes fall into the habit of thinking about the latest and greatest thing, either what's this one good thing that just happened or one bad thing that just happened, and reflecting that in the evaluation instead of thinking about it's really a full year's worth of performance that we need to make sure we capture. It's important to have a system to retain evidence importance of two-way communication, and can't emphasize enough how important it is for board members to participate in this. You know, a lot of times I'm going back and forth with the board president saying, okay, we got 6, we got 3 more to go, let's get those last one. You know, if we tell you that your job is not to run the schools, but to make sure that they're well run, and for you to exercise your oversight role, the way you do that is through the superintendent's evaluation. So we tell you the most important thing you do is hire a superintendent. The second most important thing you do as a board member is evaluate the superintendent. So it is an important part of your responsibility to participate in the evaluation. And that was all I had. If anyone had any questions for me. Sure.
So, I mean, this is my first time going through this. I'm assuming that the new tool is intuitive as to how to fill it out as somebody logging in, or is there some sort of training that goes along with that, or?
It's very intuitive. There's an instruction sheet, and then it's basically just,
Checking the box.
yeah. Uh-huh. Anyone else?
Thank you very much. And I just, having done this 5 times previously, I say this to my colleagues, in order to do this properly and fairly and for the best interest of the superintendent, I think it's fair to say plan on putting at least an hour and a half into this, of being able to read and properly document examples, which is really important. Supporting documentation is really important, and sometimes you need to sit there and think and go back to things, and that's why I would say, as you're going from here until we start this process, if you observe or think of things that will support some of these things, it's always good to jot stuff down. Charlene's not kidding that we haven't gone back and forth on occasion saying, come on, Kimmy, we need a couple more, we need a couple more. And a lot of times that's happened because as we get to this process, things happen in our lives, and trying to dedicate a proper amount of time is a difficult thing. And we've gone back and forth and just said, yes, just a reminder, and we've always been able to capture as many people as possible. So I appreciate working with you on that. It's always very important.
Well, and the good news, our IT tells us in this new one, it saves it after every keystroke. So for those of you who have used our old tool in the past and perhaps lost some of your work, told that that's not going to be the case. And they tried to make it more, friendly for your tablets and phones, and, just recognizing that you are busy and may not have time to sit in front of your computer at one time. So.
Anybody else with a question? I think we're slated for the June 1st, right?
Yes.
Or June 4th, whatever it is.
Yeah, I know we have a date set. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. We
Okay.
appreciate everything.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Charlene. We appreciate it. I have one more piece to my superintendent's report, if that's all right. Abby, are you staying the whole meeting? Are you getting out of here? Oh, you are? Okay. Then I will ask Abby a question later. Sorry to make you wait in anticipation. So that concludes my report.
Our upcoming meetings for February and March are as follows. We added a FFA meeting for this Wednesday, February 8th. And then starting in March, we have CIS and policy on March 5th, followed by PMC and FFA again on March 6th. It's at this time, we have our first public comment. You may speak about any agenda item, that you wish. We ask you to address the podium, state your name and any affiliation, and you have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Benevente. I'm a senior here at PTHS. And basically, I just came here to talk about an opinion I had about how I think we should have armed security guards, like you brought up.
Jimmy,
sorry. Yeah.
I'd hate to make you stay out later, but that's going to have to wait to the second public portion.
The
First
second
public
part?
portion is just talking about agenda items, and that's part of the board policy. So if you could just wait to the second public portion, we'll make sure you come up first so you can talk then. Is that all right?
Beautiful.
Yeah, we're going to
Alright.
get through this pretty quick. Sorry, Jimmy. And Jimmy, I'm glad you're here because I'm going to ask you some other questions later too, if that's all right. I have you and Abby. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to close that out and move along. I'm going to ask Mr. Cerisi to move the approval of the minutes, please.
Yes, I'd like to approve the minutes from February 5th, 2018.
I'll do a second. Anybody have any questions on the minutes? Roll call?
Mr. Cerisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Osmanski? Mr. Prezioso? Mrs. Shenton?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa?
Yes.
Mrs. Quigley?
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi, can you please provide your report on PMC?
Yes, I can. All right, so Quantic Township Board of Education Personnel Management and Community Committee, February 20th, 2018. We met at 8:47 p.m. in the central office. For the board was myself, Vincent Saragusa, Ann Meyer, Kim Quigley, and for the administration, Dr. Charleston. Meeting began at 8:47. Under personnel, review of personnel items and open positions. Discussion, the administration shared the personnel items for tonight's agenda. In addition, the committee discussed open positions throughout the district, which included part-time secretary at PV and a leave replacement at Hillview. Finally, the committee continued its discussions on possible transfer of staff based on enrollment and grade level, which would be effective September 2018. Action, resolutions are on the agenda for the consideration by the full board. Number 2, maintenance lead job description. Discussion, the administration shared the proposed job description and rationale for the maintenance lead position. The position would allow the successful candidate to function as a working foreman, similar to lead custodians, and help, among other things, with monitoring and leading projects. The committee recommends approval of this job description and directs the superintendent to meet with the PTEA to establish a stipend for the position. Once completed, the sidebar would be on an upcoming agenda for BOE consideration. Position would be effective July 1st, 2018. Action, there's a resolution on the agenda tonight to approve the job description only. Security guards, armed. Discussion, the administration and the committee discussed at length the feasibility of arming our Director of Security with a weapon. The process for this has already been outlined in BOE Policy 7446. The Director of Security has met all the requirements as outlined in this policy. This includes a copy of an identification card issued by the Superintendent of the State Police permitting the retired officer to carry a handgun in accordance with NJSA 2C 39-614. The district has spoken with the insurance carrier and it would cost an additional $1,500 for the premium and an additional $500 for other expenses related to annual weapon qualifications. Dr. Charleston has spoken with Quantic Police Chief Spring, and he shared that he believes that having an armed security guard would make the district safer. The committee supports this initiative as the BOE and administration has had this discussion over the last several years. The committee welcomes comments from the community at the opportunity for public comment and other BOE members under new business. Action for right now, this is informational. No action will be taken tonight. Job descriptions, K-5 Student Services Supervisor, K-12 Student Services Supervisor Technology Integration position. Discussion, the administration shared the new job descriptions for the supervisors of student services. They will now be K-5 and 6-12 instead of K-8 and 9-12. This will be effective July 1, 2018. The committee does not support the proposed technology integration position job description as such had been tabled in committee. Action, both the supervisor of student services job descriptions are on the agenda for consideration from the full board tonight. Review of non-tenured teachers and administrators. Discussion, the administration discussed non-tenured teachers and administrators. This is informational for now. Management, declining enrollment. Discussion, the committee discussed the declining enrollment committee recommendations and decided that at this time not to implement or proceed with any of those recommendations. However, the committee is still researching the feasibility of departmentalization as recommended by the committee. Furthermore, the BOE and administration have attended workshops on the committee's recommendations for establishing educational foundation and will continue to research the feasibility and implementing it here in Pequannock. Additionally, per an additional declining enrollment committee recommendation, Dr. Charleston reached out to MCVT regarding implementing a instrumental music academy. At this time, MCVT is not interested in pursuing this type of academy. As previously reported, the district did have talks with Riverdale regarding establishing a send-receive for students in 9 to 12 and or 6 to 12. At this time, there are no further plans for discussion. Administration has also and continues to look into PTHS scheduling flexibility specific into financial literacy in order to open up the schedule for additional elective opportunities for students. Action, informational only, as there will be additional recommendations from the remaining committees. RFPs in process, food service and auditor. Discussion, this will be discussed in FFA minutes. Thank God. High School Autistic Program 2018-2019. Discussion, administration shared that the high school autistic program will not run next year due to the graduation of 3 Pequannock students that are in the program. This left the program with 2 out-of-district tuition-paying students. Maintaining the program would cost Pequannock taxpayers over $40,000 to subsidize the students from other communities. The committee is hopeful that the program can regrow with Pequannock and out-of-the-district students in the future, but at this time it recommends closing effective June 30th, 2018. Action, this is informational only at this time. This will be a budgetary item that will be on next week's committee agendas for discussion. Girls Golf 2018-2019. Discussion. The committee recommends establishing a varsity girls golf program for the 2018-2019 school year. Currently, there are 10 girls on the co-ed team, and students in the middle school have also expressed interest in participating when they get to the high school. Action, this is only informational at this time. This will be a budget item for the 2018-2019 budget. Girls Volleyball 2018-2019. Discussion. The committee recommends continuing with the last year of the 3-phase-in plan and create a girls varsity volleyball team for next year. This would be in conjunction with the JV team making for a varsity JV program. Action. This is informational only at this time. This will be a budget item for the 2018-19 budget. Attendance area plan. Discussion. The committee discussed the attendance area plan, i.e. policy 5120, and in particular item number 7, which states that any students requiring special needs program will be assigned to the elementary school that can fulfill that need. The district currently duplicates special education services throughout its 3 elementary schools. This is both educationally unsound and not fiscally sound. Starting this September, the district will begin a phase-in program for students whose IEPs require specific placement in such resource placement and in-class replacement. This is consistent with the practice that we currently have in place with the elementary LLD and autistic programs. Action. Informational only, as the administration will be enforcing the policy as it is already written. K-12 supervisors. Discussion. Dr. Charleston shared that he would like to move the 4 6 to 12 supervisors and make them K to 12. Doing so would allow the supervisors to work with all the staff in areas of technology, instructional integration, modeling lessons, professional development, lesson plan review, implementing best practices, and bring consistency throughout the district, in particular to the elementary schools. Community relations. Almost done. I feel like, never mind. Update on the township liaison meeting. Discussion. Dr. Charleston updated the committee on its February 6, 2018 Joint Services Committee meeting with the township. Items on the agenda included the township use of the tennis courts at the high school, the joint vehicle maintenance agreement, use of Channel 77, the high school generator, facilities planning, the BOE/post office parking lot, housing starts, new permits, digital marquee, armed security guard, and police at North Boulevard for arrival and dismissal. Action, informational only. As you can guess, the meeting concluded at 10:47 p.m. Next meeting, March 6th, 2018 at 8:30, and that will be the budget review.
Thank you, Mr. Cerisi. Anybody have any questions on that report?
And it was almost as long as the meeting was, 2 hours.
I'm giving you a minute to take a drink and breathe. Now I'm going to ask you to move PMC.
All right. I would like to move PMC 148-18 through PMC 157-18.
Thank you, Mr. Siracusa. Any questions on that? Roll call?
Mr. Cerisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Osmanski? Mr. Prezioso? Mrs. Shenton?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa? Mrs. Quigley?
Sure. Quantic Township Board of Education Curriculum Instruction and Special Education Committee met February 21st, 2017 at 6 p.m. Myself, Mrs. Meyer, Mr. Prezioso, and Mrs. Quigley were present, as well as Dr. Charleston and Dr. Winning. First item discussed was Mission 11. The committee viewed several digital art inspirational posters produced by our students. The committee also discussed future actions by students, which include finalize the student video, print and display digital art posters, hang them in halls, outside sign, website, and indoor TV. Student presentation of video and posters to staff at meeting. Department meeting staff input for student reminders. Ask staff to send pictures for #PanthersPersevere. Student showcase at the April BOE meeting. Inspirational message Monday, April 16th. Chalk as students enter into the building for preparation for assessment. Supervisor visit math and ELA classes to discuss assessment. And student have recommended hosting a bagel breakfast after testing to celebrate academic achievement. Action, this is informational only. Number 2, elementary teachers curricula input multisensory program. The committee discussed the results of the elementary teachers input survey for the 2018-2019 school year schedule. The majority of staff state that they feel increased time for math and ELA is required. The ELA and math supervisors are currently meeting with the teachers in follow-up meetings to gain a greater perspective for this recommendation. Similarly, a focus group meeting has been scheduled for Tuesday, February 27th to meet with representatives from each grade level, school to debrief recommendations. Similarly, an Orton Gillingham Systematic Multisensory Reading Intervention Program Sunday system will also be evaluated by the staff. This program is designed to progress at the student's pace. It is not a scripted curriculum. Rather, it's a sequential, systematic, multisensory, and cumulative diagnostic program. The National Center for Learning Disabilities, the International Dyslexia Association have evaluated the Sunday system and deemed the programs contain the required elements for teaching, reading, and remediation. Action, additional data will be shared at future CIS meetings. Number 3, high school statistics textbook. Our teachers are evaluating a new high school statistics textbook. Currently, we have 45 textbooks that are no longer in print. Next year, we have 66 students signed up for statistics, and therefore, we need more books. The current statistics textbook is 12 years old and out of date with the data and information presented. The teachers will be completing their evaluation and sending forward a recommendation. Action, informational, a recommendation will be forthcoming and presented to CIS committee. Number 4, new autistic pre-KK program discussion. As per NJAC 6A14, special education allows a preschool disabled class to hold 12 students. Currently projected for next year, we have 7 students eligible for a preschool disabled class. Therefore, we will be condensing our 2 current classes to 1 class. Code also states the age span in special class programs shall not exceed 4 years in elementary programs. Students eligible for the elementary autism class range from kindergarten to grade 5, thus exceeding the 4-year age limit. Therefore, we need to expand our current section to 2 sections. As such, we will be hosting a pre-KK autistic program for students ages 4 to 5 and an autism grades 2 to 5 for students ages 7 to 10 for the 2018-2019 school year. This is informational only. Excuse me. Number 5, Allied Health Medical Institute update. Dr. Winning provided the following update for the Allied Health Medical Institute. We currently have 48 applicants. 100 participants scheduled to attend our open house February 22nd at 6 p.m. We are also interviewing candidates and have been viewing demo lessons, and that is informational only at this time. Number 6, supervisor structure. The administration has recommended a change to the following supervisor structures: Supervisor of Student Services 9 through 12 to Supervisor of Student Services 6 through 12. Supervisor of Student Services pre-K through 8 to Supervisor of Student Services K through 5. Supervisor of Mathematics, Supervisor of ELA, Supervisor of Humanities, Supervisor of STEM K through 12. Action. Job descriptions will be presented to the board for consideration at tonight's meeting. Number 7, high school start time. The committee discussed the current high school start time and the pros and cons of starting later. This is informational only at this time. And number 8, declining enrollment. The committee reviewed the declining enrollment presentation. The members discussed actions that have been completed, in process, and recommended for further exploration. The committee suggests the following points be explored: departmentalization, feasibility for grades 4 and 5, organizing elementary district-wide events to promote collaboration, enhance 8th grade activities at PTH to get students vested in staying in Pequannock. And this is informational only. Our next meeting is March 5th, 2018 at 6 p.m., which will be budget review.
Thank you, Ms. Osmansky. Anybody have any questions on that report?
I do. I just have a comment. Under the new supervisor structure, the only job descriptions are going to be the supervisor of student services, which would be K to 12 and pre-K to 5, those 2 positions. The other 4 supervisors, we're going to put those at an upcoming agenda for board approval. None of them will be in effect until July 1st.
Anybody else? All right, please move CIS.
I would like to move CIS 55-18 to CIS 59-18.
Any questions on CIS? Roll call?
Mr. Cerisi? Yes. Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Osmansky?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mrs. Shenton? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa?
Yes.
Mrs. Quigley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Syracuse, could please provide your report for FFA?
Finance Facilities and Athletics Committee met February 20th at 7:30 p.m. at the central office. Committee board members are myself, Mr. Sam Cerisi, Mr. Smith, Ms. Quigley, Dr. Charleston, Ms. Bechtel, Mr. Riffle. First thing we discussed is insurance coverage for security force. Discussion. A quote and sample policy was provided to the committee and committee members. We discussed the pros and the cons of armed guards in our schools. Actions information only, pending full board discussion on arming the security coordinator. The second thing we discussed is review for proposed capital projects. Discussion, preliminary cost estimates were reviewed for the following proposed projects to be included in the 2018-19 budget with funding from capital reserve: high school science lab, high school bathrooms, the air conditioning on the second floor of SJG and PV, gym floors at North Boulevard and Hillview, fire system at PV and SJG, girls softball school board. This is information only. Requests for proposals are in progress for the food service and an auditor. Discussion. Ms. Bechtel will be soliciting these proposals in March. The action is information only. 2018-2019 budget review. Discussion. Dr. Charleston and Ms. Bechtel reviewed the draft budget proposal with personnel changes to be reviewed in detail at PMC committee. The action. FFA committee was going to meet again to review and approve a draft to share with the board. Number 5, update on town liaison meeting. Discussion. Dr. Charleston provided an update on the recent meeting with the town officials. Topics discussed included community use of the tennis courts, the availability of Channel 77, installation of a generator at PTHS, the reduction of the township property assessments of $29 million due to successful property tax appeals, request for police assistance at arrival and dismissals, long-term facilities plan for the municipal complex. This action is information only. Sixth thing we discussed is declining enrollment committee. The discussion, board members would like administration to explore the departmentalization at 4th and 5th grades. Action, the administration is to research the departmentalization. Our next meeting will be March 6, 2018, 7 p.m. for budget review.
Thank you, Mr. Sirkis. Any questions or comments on that?
I do.
report?
I do. First of all, when we type these, when the minutes are typed up, we kind of sometimes add things like we did with CIS or change them. And just a reminder, as Ms. Quigley read, that we do have a FFA-only committee meeting on Wednesday at 5:45 to discuss the budget, and we will do that again, as Mr. Siracusa said, on March 6th. The other thing I just want to highlight is the installation of the generator at PTHS. This is a township was awarded a grant through FEMA as a result of Hurricane Sandy. And as fast as the government moves, it looks like that the generator will be finally installed this summer. It's like a little hamster wheel. But the generator will actually be able to power the entire building. So we're very excited about that. And as high school students, I'm sure Abby and Jimmy are excited that you'll never have another day off of school, because if the power goes out, you will always have school at the high school. So I just wanted to highlight that the generator is not something that the district is purchasing. It is through the township who was awarded a grant.
Anyone other than Dr. Charleston have anything on that?
Yes, I had one question with the obsolete equipment. I see like a bunch of Chromebooks. Like, how long do those usually last? I don't even know if we have an answer, but what is?
Those are the original life Chromebooks. I think they're close to 5 years old.
5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We've beat them up pretty bad.
Okay, please move FFA.
I'd like to move FFA 10518 through FFA 11218.
I'll second that. Any questions on FFA? Roll call?
Mr. Cerisi? Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Osmanski?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mrs. Shenton?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa?
Yes.
Mrs. Quigley?
Yes.
The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Meyer, please provide your, oh, go ahead. I know you always have something to say.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to recognize some folks who were very generous in donating some stuff here. The Golden Panthers Football Club, Jay Foth, the Grand Slam Club. Thank you for your donations.
Thank you. Mrs. Meyer, can you please provide your report on policy?
The Policy Committee met at the board office on February 21st at 7:15 p.m. Present were myself, Mrs. Quigley, Ms. Osmanski, and Ms. Shenton. For the administration was Dr. Charleston and Dr. Winning. Discussion items, Policy 0144, Board Member Orientation and Training. The committee discussed removing the requirement for the distribution of the Long Range Facilities Plan, LRFP, to new board members from policy 0144 due to non-operational software. The NJDOE was releasing a new platform for long-range facility plans to use in the updating process. The software has not been operational to date, and therefore the current process is to file an application for all capital projects that will amend the existing LRFP. Therefore, policy 0144 will remove the requirement for distribution of the LRFP to each new board member. This policy is presented tonight for first reading. Item 2, Policy 3437 and Policy 4437, Military Leave. Discussion. The committee discussed the recommendations set forth by Strauss Esme regarding military leave. The committee members posed several questions concerning terminology, which will be investigated. Policies will be discussed at a future, the action is the policies will be discussed at a future policy committee meeting. Number 3, Policy 5112, entrance age. The discussion, the committee recommends modifying the entrance age policy to reflect current practices. The revisions state that all incoming kindergarten students are encouraged to participate in an orientation to provide an opportunity for staff to observe and gather information to assist in the determination of class placement, including academic indicators, maturity levels, social emotional dimensions, as well as other relevant factors. The revisions remove this reference of a kindergarten screen test. Action, this policy is on tonight's agenda for first reading. Item 4, Regulation 5561R, Use of Physical Restraint. Discussion, a new restraint and seclusion law was signed by Governor Christie January 16, 2018. The regulations add specific notification procedures and timelines to parents and annual employee training. The regulations are revised to reflect the new law requirements. Action, the regulations are on tonight's agenda for first reading. Policy 5516.01, Student Tracking Devices, is item 5. Discussion, the policy provides guidance when parents request their child to be permitted to have a global positioning system, GPS, device in use while their child is in school. A student possessing a device that enables a third party to track the student or device while the student is in school, at a school-sponsored event, or on a school bus is not governed by any federal or state law or administrative code. However, a device on school grounds that enables recording and/or transmission of audio or video communications that are taped or provides one-way or two-way audio-video would be a violation of student privacy rights governed by FERPA and New Jersey Administrative Code. This policy indicates that a violation of this policy is a violation of the Student Code of Conduct and subject to appropriate discipline. The action is this policy is on tonight's agenda for first reading. Item 6, Regulation 7101R, Educational Adequacy of Capital Projects. Discussion, this regulation is revised to eliminate the phrase district factor from the phrase district factor Group E. Group E stands for Educational Buildings as determined by the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs. Also, there is a change in the NJAC citation to NJAC 6A:25-5.4. Action, this regulation is on tonight's agenda for first reading. Item 7, Policy 9541, Student Teachers and Interns. Discussion, the committee discussed revising the policy to permit student teachers/intern candidates to complete their portfolio requirements, including the videotaping of lessons, to complete and pass the Educational Teacher Preparation Assessment for the NJDOE. Action, this policy is on tonight's agenda for first reading. Item 8, Policy 9242, Use of Electronic Signatures. Discussion, this new policy provides guidance regarding the use of electronic forms, filings, and signatures in school district and parent communications for efficiency and cost savings. These recommendations are aligned to the New Jersey Uniform Transaction Act, UETA, and the NJSA 12A 12-1. Action, this policy is on tonight's agenda for first reading. Review policies. The committee reviewed the following policies as part of their review process. Policy 0133, Adjudication of Disputes. Discussion. The committee reviewed Policy 0133. The committee has requested clarification for the jurisdiction over disputes or controversies arising over authorities vested by the board by statute, rule of the State Board of Education, contract, or policy of the board. Further clarification will be sought by Strauss Esme. Action, this policy will be discussed at future policy committee meetings. Policy 2132, School District Objectives. The committee reviewed Policy 2132. The committee recommends no changes required. Action, the policies will be presented tonight for readoption, first reading. Policy 5701, Plagiarism. The committee reviewed Policy 5701, Plagiarism. The committee suggests removing some old terminology and adding reference to electronic mediums. Action, the policy will be discussed at future policy committee meetings. Policy 7446, School Security Program. Dr. Charleston asked the committee to read and review this policy in preparation for the board's security discussion at tonight's meeting. Action, informational. Policy 1100, Organizational Chart. The committee reviewed the current organizational chart and recommends changes be provided at a future meeting to reflect the change in job description for the supervisors of student services. Action, this policy will be discussed at future policy committee meetings. Policy 5120, Attendance Area Plan. The committee reviewed the current attendance area plan as it relates to placement of special education students. No changes are recommended at this time. The administration is currently studying a rollout of special education placement as per Policy 5120, to limit redundant services and to provide a better educational setting for all students. Action is informational. Additional discussion will be forthcoming with the details of the rollout plan. Declining enrollment. The committee reviewed the declining enrollment presentation. The members discussed actions that have been completed in process and recommended for further exploration. The committee suggests the following points be explored. 1, departmentalization feasibility for grades 4 and 5. 2, organizing elementary district-wide events to promote collaboration. And 3, to enhance 8th grade activities at PTHS to get students vested in staying in Pequannock. The following policies will be reviewed by the policy committee members in preparation for the March meeting. Policy 5114, children displaced by domestic violence. Policy 5520, disorder and demonstration. And Policy 5570, sportsmanship. The next meeting is on March 19th at 7:15, although I believe we're meeting before that. We are also meeting on March 5th for budget.
Yeah, March 5th, correct.
Okay.
7:15
At
for
7:15,
budget.
awesome.
review.
Thank you.
Any questions on that report? Okay, please move policy, Mrs. Meyer.
I'd like to move P11-18 and P12-18.
Second it. Any questions on those? Roll call.
Mr. Cerisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Osmanski?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mrs. Shenton?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa? Mrs. Quigley? The motion carries. Thank you.
Topic that you wish. We ask you to address the podium, state your name and affiliation. You have up to 5 minutes to speak. Jimmy, you had come down before, so we're going to ask you to come down now and go first.
Jimmy, we apologize for having you wait.
No problem.
So,
Hello again. So basically I came here to say that I think we should have armed security guards, multiple, not just one. As I've known Ron since my freshman year, and you know he's very talented at what he's done, at what he's doing. But you know, he's a security guard of the district. He can't be in multiple places at once. Anyway, you know, I'm glad that you guys have been talking about this. I don't think that teachers should have guns, personally. You know, I think we should hire people that have experience with guns. Like all the security guards we have, I'm close with all of them. I know they're all retired cops, or most of them, and they all have had, you know, they've all carried weapons. As regards to this whole March for Our Lives, I think it's ridiculous. I think anybody participating in it is just, you know, it makes no sense. This whole march has been politicized to something about an issue that they're not talking about, which is security. And then marching outside of the schools is a security issue, okay? Because when we have, like I told Dr. Celso, I talked to her about this as well. She told me about this meeting, that's why I'm here. But, you know, if we have these kids marching outside of the school, this is a security issue, okay? Because some psychopath sees this all over the media. Everyone's talking about this. So all these kids outside of the school, anybody could come with a gun, shoot them up. You know, same incident that happened in Florida. So yeah, I just wanted to bring to the table.
done?
Yes.
Jimmy, we usually don't go back and forth and ask questions, but as a student leader, I did want to ask you a question. I wanted to ask Abby this question as well. The March 14th walkout, and there's also one that's scheduled for April 20th that seems to have lost some legs right now, but it may come back up as April hits. And it seems like the county, when I had my county superintendent roundtable meeting on Friday, it seems pretty split amongst what's going on in the county. A lot of districts are having a hard line and saying no. Some are saying yes.
I mean, it is difficult to say no because, you know, I know First Amendment right and all of that. You have the right, you know, if you want to march, you can march if you want. But, I mean, I don't know where the school could step in with that because I do know once you enter the school, some rights are, I don't want to say taken away, but...
The old saying is you don't check all your rights in at the schoolhouse door. but you do have certain rights. But there are some rights here. Once you're in school, we don't want students leaving.
Mhm.
But what I wanted, I didn't mean to cut you off, I apologize. But what I wanted to ask, really both of you, if that's okay, was that I did ask Dr. Salso to meet with the student leaders. So I have two of my student leaders here. And I wanted her to have an open conversation with you in terms of, instead of the walkout, what do the students need in terms to address this tragedy in Florida? And I know Abby reported on that, but I'm asking you as well, and I do want to ask Abby as well, because I really want to hammer home that we don't want students necessarily walking out on March 14th. We wanted to give them another opportunity to express their views, to address their concerns. Is what you guys have planned as the student leaders acceptable? Is that what you guys want to do, is what I'm getting at?
Yeah, so Dr. Celso asked me this too, and like I told her, which I think is great, this assembly we're gonna have tomorrow, I mean, this is the best way, you know? Kids could stand up, ask the questions they want to ask, share their opinions, you know, not get in trouble for well, you know, to a certain extent, I guess, but yeah, you know, say what's on their mind, say what they want to be heard, and they could do that in the assembly without marching outside, making it a security risk.
And then the moment of silence, in terms of honoring those victims, was also came up from you guys? Was that your suggestions as the student leaders?
Yes.
Okay. And the idea of writing the posters and letters, was that also a suggestion that came out from the students? I know Claire was involved as well.
Yeah, I know Claire Dudgeon, she's the one that mentioned that. She saw that on social media, how other schools are doing that as well.
Okay. So Abby, I've kind of been talking a lot. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to anything we've said?
No, we basically covered it.
You covered it? Okay.
Thank you.
Please.
So, hold on a second. Hey, so thanks for coming up here and talking. I know it's not easy, you know what I mean? But you brought up a good point. You know, a coordinated event like a walkout. That's exactly, you know, what somebody wants is an opportunity. And you don't necessarily need a gun. As we've seen in New York City, as we've seen in Nice, France, what you need is a method, a vehicle, a mechanism to cause havoc. So a coordinated event from a school for kids to walk out at a known place and time is probably not the smartest thing.
Advertised all over the mainstream media, social media. You go on Twitter, it's all over the place.
Because you just
all
don't
over
need
the
a gun.
place. Yeah.
You need a mechanism. So thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. Well spoken. You know, whatever side you're on, I just want to say that you spoke very well.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
So my name is Kylie McGowan.
Nope.
Oh, I apologize. So my name is Kylie and I'm a 4th grade student at Hillview School. I'm asking you all to keep the elementary schools the same for 2018 and beyond. I do not want the reconfiguration. I have a little brother who is going into kindergarten in the fall of 2018, and since my family loves Hillview, my parents and I want my little brother to get the wonderful Hillview experience. I'm not saying that North Boulevard and SJG aren't good schools, it's just that I'm in Hillview and I love my school. I have some friends at North Boulevard and it must be very scary for them to be moving schools because they probably love their school just like I do. They also probably just want to stay at their own school. Also, my parents have 2 kids, my brother and I. Some parents have more than 2 kids. It will be a rush every morning because since of all of the elementary schools will start at 8:30 a.m., the parents will be rushing to get them to school without them being late. The mornings are already stressful, so if the reconfiguration happens, then it'll be way more stressful. Parents will be like, Lord help me, can anyone relate? If parents have work, they can be late and that would be very bad. But this will only happen if the parents have a kid or more kids that are in grades K through 3 and a kid or more kids that are in grades 4 through 5. I myself am saying keep the schools the way they are. We love all the elementary schools. My name is Kylie and I say keep the schools the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. You can have a seat. Kylie, there's no thought process to reconfiguring the schools. The board looked at the declining enrollment committee recommendations that were presented in November and in committee reports today, which I know is hard to listen to when they talk for 45 minutes straight. But in those committee reports, they talked about looking at ways to address some of those recommendations that came out of the declining enrollment committee. So at this point, we're going to look into those recommendations. The board and I will probably talk more about it under old business. You certainly don't need to be here for that. You should go home. But there is no plans for reconfiguration at this time. Good job.
Thank you. My name is Janelle McGowan, 32 William Street in Pequannock. So thank you for this evening. Thank you so much for letting her speak. I heard you talking about departmentalizing the 4th and 5th grade. Any way you can just explain a little bit about that? Of what that looks like? Or can I pose what I think it looks like? Is it more like a teacher teaching humanities, social studies, English and writing? So the kids would be going to that class, let's say 20 students going to that class, and then they would swap to go to another teacher for math and science?
Yeah, so departmentalization right now, we're going to talk more about the teachers and how they would envision it if it were implemented, but it would be a math science versus a humanities split.
Okay. And that looking for possibly this September?
I don't think we're going to be ready for this September. Okay. I'm not positive with that, but I think that, you know, there's no appetite to reconfigure, and quite frankly, I don't think there's much of an appetite to implement a lot of the things that came out of the declining enrollment committee. So we'll start with those recommendations, which were to investigate, and then go from there.
Great. Right. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm signing. What is today's date? Does anybody know? To what? 26. Meetings. From Bob Morley, 4 Jacksonville Road. Okay. Let me just start. I wanted to make it clear that what I'm about to say makes it clear. This non-reflection at all has nothing at all to do with the administration and staff with SJG. We had an issue last time, and for some reason, I guess I didn't make that clear enough. I want to make it very clear this time. I'm here to talk about the continued discrepancies between SJG and the other 2 schools. I want to thank Dr. Charleston for giving me the information, the correct information. It's always helpful to have the correct information to work from. At this point, I'm feeling a lot like Don Quixote. I feel like I'm the only one tilting the windmills on this, but I can sing the impossible dream, but that would clear this room out, so I won't do that. In 2017, there were more students at SJG than there were at Hillview, which I find odd because Hillview is literally 20% or 15% larger than SJG. And there were 5, according to the records filed, there were actually 5 less teachers with more students at SJG than there were at Hillview. Again, that's your records. The park scores show SJG did increase 10% over the last 2 years, which is great. North Boulevard went up about 20%, which is wonderful. And Hillview went up 30%, which is more than wonderful. So SJG is actually further away from the other 2 elementary schools than they were starting. Again, I don't know why. I'm not in education, but I can read these numbers. And this is my concern since obviously my son's in SJG. Again, I don't have previous numbers, but I've talked to a lot of people in town. Apparently this is basically a 20+ year trend. What I'm concerned about is if it is related to the conditions, these conditions are there. They're going to be there for the next couple of years, which is the first two, first and second grade for my son, which is the years that are going to be ingrained into his learning and how much and what his impressions of schooling are and possibly affect, his future. Again, Dr. Charleston, I want to thank you for the numbers and thank you for being kind enough to be willing to meet with me on this. But I'm hoping somebody can give me some answers on this. I don't know if anybody's looking into this, if anything's being done about this. I really do hope something is being done about this. Because, my son obviously is my primary concern, but fairness is, I think, important as well. Lastly, it's a little bit off topic, but I'll just mention it anyway. I don't know when you guys are discussing this armed security guard, the concept of bringing a gun into school, please just really, really, really reconsider it. It's just against everything you're supposed to be doing. Kids are supposed to be learning. They're not supposed to have, it's not a prison, it's a school. That's the only thing I can please. So please, please, please reconsider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. I'm going to address some of your questions now. I know we have a meeting scheduled Friday, which I would be able to go, I guess, more into detail. I don't want to take up too much time tonight. But first of all, we sent you information regarding the capacity and the fact that the SJG is not over capacity. The new gymnasium never made it with the architect and the audit to marry each other. So the capacity at SJG is it was 278, but when the new gym was completed, it's up to 354, and currently we have about 285 students in SJG as of February 1st. I do want to address the scores. We have started. We've looked into the scores at SJG, but the same in Hillview, PV, North Boulevard, and the high school. Today, I think in CIS they reported Mission 11 as one of the concerns that we have with the high school students. But we also allocated some resources, in particular to the elementary schools, with our supervisors of language arts and math, to get down there and to kind of work with the principals to see exactly what's going on, so we could have even more consistency, which is one of the reasons we're going to change the structure of the supervisors next year to be all K-12. But let me get specifically today to the scores, I think, which is what I believe is one of the concerns that you brought up. And these are the scores that were printed in the newspaper. They're in your school performance reports that I had emailed you as well, and they're public knowledge for anyone who just Google New Jersey School Performance Reports. And for the board and the community, we are working on a presentation, and we'll probably present that March and April to the board once we get all of our data together. So for elementary, the scores were broken down like this. The ELA proficiency and math proficiency were each worth 17.5% each. ELA growth and math growth were each worth 25% each. And then your chronic absenteeism was worth 15% each. So let's talk about 85% of that test. 85% of that test is strictly based on the PARCC test, a one-time, over the course of multiple days, but one assessment. And while yes, the numbers at SJG are a little bit lower, I think I would highlight that, first of all, under the growth, if you go to the school performance report card, under ELA, Hillview's growth, the median growth for Hillview was 53. And for SJG, it was 49.5. All right, so that's only a 4.5 point difference. For North Boulevard, it was actually quite higher. North Boulevard was 13 points higher than Hillview at 66. And then for math, North Boulevard was 53, and SJG was 49, another 4-point difference, with Hillview scoring the highest in that in math at a 60. I also want to just point out that the scores are based on students who took the test last year in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Okay, so last year we had 2 sections each in each building of 5th graders. So if you count the 2 sections of 4th graders and the 2 sections of 5th graders at SJG, that's a total of about 90 students that took that test, that factor into the 50% makeup of the ELA and math growth percentile. What I'm getting at is that's a small sample size. And though we certainly can and want to do better, we actually see that our SGPs, our student growth indicators, without getting into too much specifics, Mr. Morley, and for everybody else, actually the highest scores in the district are at SJJ. We have the highest performers there, but there's a gap between the highest performers and the next highest performers, whereas your schools at North Boulevard and Hillview have not all, but more above average performers. So that's how we're starting to dive into the data and look to see how we're implementing it. We do have room for improvement in all school districts. I mean, in all of our schools, from the 3 elementaries through the high school. At the end of the day, SJG had 127 testers, North Boulevard had 149, and Hillview had 141. So I do think that SJG had a little bit less margin for error. SJG also has, well, I'm not going to say the rest of that. That's student privacy stuff. So I don't think there's anything wrong with SJG. I think SJG is a wonderful school. If I lived in the district, I send my daughter to any one of our elementary schools. I think that's a great principal and a wonderful staff. But that being said, we are looking at ways to improve and have consistency across all of our elementary schools. And I guess we'll talk more about it on Friday. Thanks, Abby. Appreciate it.
Hi, Tammy Holsley. Kind of glad I didn't have to go after the little girl. You were really good, by the way. So I just want to say thank you for for the committee reports, and there's a lot more information you're giving out. It is a lot to talk and it's a lot to take in, but appreciate hearing all those reports. Before I just had 2 questions on some of the things in reports. I just want to say, many of you know I'm very involved in basketball and sports, and the winter season was really a lot of fun to watch. Some of you I saw at some of the games where they did a game for Gavin and for the military appreciation night, and our kids really do some amazing things, our student athletes, so it's a good thing to go out there and see, and looking forward to seeing some spring sports starting at the end of the week. My first question was about the special ed. I heard something that come out of Mr. Cerisi's report about saying something along the lines of putting the kids that are in special ed all in the same school. And I was wondering if I heard that wrong, or what that meant, where if you had an IEP, I understand you have to have resource room teachers at every school, and that might be a little more expensive, but I don't know how that would work. If I heard it right, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because kids are constantly being evaluated, so how you would put all those kids in the same school. For example, my school is pre-K to 1. We have kids that are in special ed pre-K. By the time they come to me in 1st grade, they already don't have an IEP anymore. So how you would handle that is constantly changing. It's a living document. The goal is the least restrictive environment, so you want to get those kids, you know, more in the gen ed classroom and not in those rooms. So how that would look if you were to kind of consolidate them all into one school. I may have heard it wrong, so if I heard it wrong, I apologize. And another example would be most kids that are diagnosed dyslexic, that does not happen until you're 8. So you're in a school for kindergarten and 1st grade, you're in 2nd grade, all of a sudden, okay, let's evaluate for that because you're really seeing a lot of issues. So now that kid all of a sudden has an IEP for dyslexia, they have to move, or how does that work? Again, I'm not sure if I heard that right. And the other thing I was wondering about was the kindergarten screening that used to be done, and now I know it's just an orientation. And I'm curious if the teachers have noticed that the classes are not as nicely or evenly split amongst, academics, behavior, things like that, because from a screening, I'm sure you get more information about the kids than you do just from seeing them for a half an hour kind of in the classroom. I know we tend to see some areas like speech is a big one right away off the bat. You can see kids that are a little more shy. They don't want to be with their parents. They want to be with their parents. You might see a little bit of hyperactivity just in having a 10, 15, 20-minute screening of that student, and you might be able to split a little better. I mean, I'm sure when my daughter went to screening, she probably just sat there, and I don't think you would get much out of most of those kids to be able to evenly split amongst the 2 or 3 classes that you have. I'm just curious if that was something you were going to look back at, as doing the screening, or leave it like that. But I think that was it. So again, if I was wrong in hearing about the IEPs and the special ed classes, please feel free to correct me. I just wanted to know what that might look like. Thank you.
The screening for the kindergarten students, that's actually came from the kindergarten teachers. I don't see that we have any issues in kindergarten in terms of how we place the students. It also came from the administrators. The process that was placed, we've not been screening for quite a while. So the change again in language is directly from the kindergarten teachers and administrators. Regarding special education, no, you did hear that correctly. We are going to begin a phase-in implementation for students and in-class support or resource room and in-class support, as I call it in high school. This would be phased in, but we have students now that switch between schools based on special education programs. So we had students this year that have left SJG to go to Hillview because of a special education program there. If you look across the district, we have many classes. When I say many, I mean almost at every grade level, whether in resource room or in class support, where teachers are working with 1, sometimes 2 students, and then we as a board, administration don't feel that that's in the best interest of students to learn either in isolation or with one other peer. So we'll start to work on a rollout process for that, and we will communicate that.
John Martin, Pompton Plains. I want to thank everybody today for the committee reports. I thought they were very in-depth. I know there was a lot of issues that were talked about, particularly one that is entirely out of your hands, the issue of school violence that was, thrust upon us again in the past few weeks. I wasn't going to say anything about this today, but this happened in the town that I grew up in just today. There was an incident that fortunately there was no loss of life in Dumont. That I only found out about this afternoon. So I understand it can happen at any time, at any place, and I appreciate everybody's comments. I know a lot of people feel strong, have strong opinions one way or the other on this issue, and certainly it's not anyone's place to overly politicize an event like this. I do want to say that to the extent any of the high school kids felt like participating in the walkout, I would hope that they it wouldn't be held against them. I know to the extent that there were comments about it being an organized activity. I just want to say there are organized activities that happen every day. It's pickups, drop-offs, high school football games. That wouldn't be something that would concern me. Obviously it would concern me, but with respect to wanting to limit it for that reason. To the extent that any of the kids do ultimately decide to participate in it, I just hope you guys are judicious with them. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time as always.
Hi, Ann Moore, 86 West Parkway, Pompton Plains. Thank you so much for recognizing the students today. My child was one of them, and My other child was recognized last month, and my third is going, great, when can I be recognized? So I had to tell her she needs to settle down. I'm only up here really about the security topics. I'm interested in the output, and I only just wanted to share some feedback. I'm not sure how I feel about the armed security person. I know Sam and I have chatted about it in the past, just informally. You know, I personally am naturally against it. I don't know if it's my Irish heritage where no police have guns at all in Ireland, and it's difficult for me to come to grips with what my right position is. But I was interested in also really the other security measures that you're looking at as well. You know, a friend of mine, you know, I go quite into my school a lot. They know me very well. They know my face. They know me when I enter. But I was conversing about a month or two ago with two of my friends whose husbands never go in the school. And my one friend, her husband went for the first time in like a year to pick up because she's always there. And he said that he was really shocked that he walked right in. They didn't ask for any ID. They didn't know him at all. And he went right in, and there's really no blocking or checking, and there's no really even confirming that he goes into the office area. In fact, he didn't. So I would just recommend you also look at those kind of security issues. Even like I would recommend thinking outside the box. You know, we have two, like in the other schools, they might be slightly differently configured, but I've been in both SJG and North Boulevard as well. But just using Hillview, my own school, as an example, there are two sets of glass doors, and you know, once you get into unlock the front door, which they don't ask you properly or for your reason for being there, then you go into the second door and you can go anywhere. You don't have to turn and go into the office. But you could change the configuration. I don't know what door technology is out there, but you could make it so that, you know, the only thing dividing you between the two doors, there is a wall there. Right now it holds folders on the other side for the office, but you could make another door into the office so that you know, maybe during main parts of students going in and out, the two doors are both free to open, but during the hours that the school is closed, you could put locks on both doors and force the visitors who do enter. After you enter the first door, you then are forced to go through the office and check in, and like a different level of defense, like things like that. I would like to see what alternatives are being considered there. So I just wanted to put that into your thought. Use the example that my friend's husband gave, who was backed up by a similar husband. We were all having drinks and we were talking about the lack of security and comparing across schools, and it was alarming that there really is no security. So in addition to discussing the level of do we need arms, I mean, I think you should evaluate many steps before that. So I would plead you to consider those details. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close out public comment. And we're going to move on the agenda to old business. Mr. Syracuse, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and move resolution OB 18-18.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Meyer. Any questions on that? Roll call?
Mr. Cerisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Osmanski?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mrs. Shenton?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Siracusa? Mrs. Quigley?
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any old business?
I do. I just want to finalize the declining enrollment, as we brought it out in the committee meeting minutes, that we're going to look at the feasibility for departmentalization in grades 4 to 5, and that includes that conversation with elementary administration and staff. We're going to look to organize some elementary district-wide events that they can do together. Our goal would be perhaps to try to do one a marking period. I know they do trimesters, but I'm going to use marking periods, so at least 4 a year. And then to enhance 8th grade activities at the high school to get students vested in staying in Pequannock. I do want to say we do several activities, but we'll continue to try to investigate. We'll meet with our student leaders here at the high school, and I'll have Mr. Hazler grab his student leaders at PV, and we'll start to come up with a plan for that. There's no timeline for any of these things. I do not believe, again, that we will be, if departmentalization were to work, you know, and fly by, and by April 1st we have stuff, I don't anticipate anything happening until September 2019.
Anybody else with old business? No?
Yeah.
Okay, since we have no old business, we're going to move on to new business. I'm going to let Dr. Charleston at least preface the
Discussion, yeah.
beginning of the
So for new business, again, I had said in my superintendent report, I had sent out what we currently do. And that's not all that we do. There are many other things, but on the advice of our Quantic Township Police, and on the advice of our school security experts, which is really the Morris County, comes out of the Morris County Prosecutor's Office, the New Jersey Department of Homeland Security, is that we don't share everything. And I had gotten emails from people saying, well, why don't you do this? Is this in place? Can you let me know about that? And the answer is no. I shared what I can share. Tonight's discussion under new business is strictly going to be about arming the full-time director of security. This is not about, we're not having a conversation about him as a person. We're not having a conversation about him with qualifications. These are personnel matters. So we were talking just about the fact of arming a full-time security guard with a gun at the high school. Again, this has been a topic for several years. This goes back to 2014 when I was principal and we first hired the security guards. And then it came up when Dr. Nusatelli was the interim, and it came up right away with me. If you remember last year, we looked at hiring Class 3 officers. We've looked at SROs and so on. But we did change the policy last year, I believe in May, something like that, right? And that, so everything is in place in terms of what this person needs to do in order to carry. What it would involve is a Board of Education resolution. There is no policy change, it's already in the policy. He's already met all the requirements as outlined in the policy. So no action is going to be taken tonight, and I don't anticipate action being taken at the next meeting. But I do think that the board needs to have a discussion about whether or not philosophically you believe that we should arm a security guard, and that's how I'll frame it.
Anybody want to start?
I'm just going to really just say what I've been thinking about, and I think, you know, I kind of agree with Mrs. Moore. I feel like I'm battling with it with myself because it does feel uncomfortable to arm somebody in our schools, although I do know that the DARE officers all come and go into the schools quite frequently. So I've been really thinking hard about this. One of the things that I have thought about is if we chose not to and we could have prevented something or saved somebody, if he was armed, that would be a really hard thing to have on us, I think. So that's just, I'm just sharing where my mindset is at and what I'm going back and forth with.
Yeah, so literally, Mrs. Osmansky, you took the words out of my mouth. So I grew up in New Zealand, where also the police don't carry. And I'm also very conflicted because, God forbid, something were to happen, I couldn't forgive myself if an armed security guard could have stopped it. And then, you know, I sort of have to ground myself and say, well, this isn't where I grew up, and this isn't the same time when I grew up, right? So it's different challenges. Obviously, we didn't have drills where we had to hide in the corner like our kids have to now. So I'm totally with you. I like.
I'll go. No, I'll go. Do you want me to go or?
I said I wasn't
Okay.
going to speak.
I'll-
I wasn't going to speak. I think everybody knows where I stand on it. think we should have done this 3 years ago. But I think the one thing that a lot of people don't want to think about is that we have a lot of parents that are police officers, Homeland Security, FBI. They're walking into your building every day with a weapon. And to think otherwise, you're fooling yourself. I think, to me, it's a no-brainer, but I absolutely know where you guys are coming from. But I think at this point, you know, it's almost like we've missed the boat. And now I don't think we really have a choice anymore. I don't know if that makes any sense. I mean, I guess we do, but I think the choice has been made for us. So.
Want me to go? Sure. I had similar concerns as members of the public and other board members here. So much so that this year when I went to the NJSBA convention, I made sure that I attended the presentation specifically discussing whether or not, discussing the pros and cons and options for arming a some sort of security personnel in schools because I had these concerns because I was torn about what to do. And I can't say that I came out of there specifically convinced still one way or another, but I felt certainly better informed by the presentation. I did learn a lot from other board members and administrators who were there attending that session. I realized how very fortunate we are here in Pequannock in terms of our local police department and the size of our township and response time as a result of that. There are districts, even here in congested New Jersey, that are really spread out, that rely on county officers where, you know, we know if you read any of the details on the school shootings that have occurred in the past, things occur very quickly. If they're waiting for 10 minutes for a local police officer to show up, that's too late. So I did learn to appreciate the resources that we do currently have here in Pequannock with our police department and with the size of our township. But that said, given the issues we're facing in society that are out of our control, I do think that we need to do our best to secure our buildings. I do believe that guns are already, as Mr. Cerisi said, in and out of our schools. We have our police, in addition to our school resource officer, who we do have a school resource officer who works for the police department, in addition to his regular, you know, he's regularly at all of our schools. His responsibility, my understanding, is a lot about building relationships and doing preventative things, and I think it's important that we do always keep, I know our conversation is limited to arming or not arming, but we do need to keep that in mind, that there are things that we're doing proactively to prevent situations like this. I think the student who spoke earlier did mention the good relationships our students have with the officers who are currently, the unarmed officers currently working here. I think that our students in general don't view them as a threat. They view them as resources and people they can turn to. And like everybody else who's spoken, I do feel like if something were to happen and we hadn't made our best efforts to prevent it, I just don't know how to help with that. So.
Okay, I'll go. I'm sorry, Vinny. Well, as a teacher myself, this is a topic that's been on my mind basically, you know, since February 14th. You know, for the past week, it's all we've talked about in the teacher's room. I've had to stop teaching in the middle of lessons just to reassure kids that, you know, you're safe here and answer any questions they have, and they have many. You know, personally, having an armed guard in my school would not make me feel any safer. I think the drills we have in place and everything the administration and teachers do is, you know, is great for, you know, preventing what we can. I don't think an armed guard will make it any better. With that being said, you know, while I respect everyone, the 9 of us up here, This is a decision that really shouldn't be made by only 9 people. I think we need to have input from the teachers, the staff, and dare I say it, even the kids. These are the people who go through the halls every day, and they're the ones that will be affected by this on a daily basis. So we need feedback from all of those people to fully grasp what they're comfortable having in their schools. I understand we're the board, but I feel like we got a little taste. We got 2 or 3 people. I think we need more feedback from the people who actually travel the hallways and see how they feel about it.
Question. So are you having these discussions in your own school? And I'm not trying to be
As
icky when
far
I
as
say this.
teachers?
Well, meaning I'm assuming every board is going through these conversations at this time. So you feel that our district should take input from teachers and staff and students. Is your district doing the same?
No. Well, not yet. We have a lot of great measures in place already. Some of the things we do here in Pequannock, we do over where I teach. Some things we do where I teach, we don't quite do here yet. But no, they haven't come to us just yet. And that's one thing, quite frankly, we're a little upset about, that people on the front lines have no say about any of this. And I think they really want more of a say. So it'd be nice to just listen to them.
Can I just ask something before you go, Vinny? Our teachers were aware we were having this discussion tonight, right? I haven't seen a representative from the association here tonight. Maybe, but they were aware we were going to discuss. Not that we're taking action, but it's on the agenda, and it was okay. I just wanted to be sure. Okay.
So the association gets the agenda specifically sent to them on Friday, to the leadership, and then I posted it in my letter, obviously on a Sunday night that I sent out. I actually respectfully disagree with you, Rich. I don't think that. I think that's your job as a board member, is to make those decisions. This is the opportunity for the public to have input in that. You ran, when I say you, the 9 board members here, to make difficult decisions. I don't have a feeling either way whether or not we arm a security guard or not, but I do think that I would not be polling children about how they feel about whether or not there should be armed guards in the building or in the buildings if you decide to do all 5 buildings. I do think it's a board decision, and I would leave it at that.
So, very sensitive topic. I respect everybody's opinion on it. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of bad people out there that can do a lot of bad things, with weapons. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a student. It could be a parent, in the case of domestic violence, a student on student, student code, it could be custody disputes, and weapons are available. Whether people at home don't lock them up properly, the accessibility to these weapons, anybody can get their hands on them potentially. I have to agree with Brett. I value your opinion, so I don't want to just single you out on that, but ultimately it's our decision at this board, and that's why we get voted in, because our constituents entrust us to make these hard decisions. Sometimes they're not popular, but we're here to make these hard decisions. I think Brett's discussed the fact that the current security head of security is a retired police officer. He met all the qualifications. Whoever is the head of security in the future, if this does go through, will in fact meet all the qualifications necessary. It's not something that we take lightly. However, if we look at the difference in time, if an armed security guard is in our schools when an incident happens, at the onset of an incident, the police will be here quickly, absolutely. I have every faith and confidence in our police department that they will be. But what happens from the time the call comes until they arrive is what we need to think about. So if we have an armed guard in our school, and even for 30 seconds, if he takes the attention off of the kids and puts it on him, that's just as many students that can possibly get to safety. You know, we look at what happened in, was it 4 minutes in Florida? There was a guard there, and, well, whatever the situation was, you know, he didn't act. But I have every faith and confidence the person that we hire, or the people that we hire, will in fact act. So, in those 7 minutes, you know, if one of those officers intervened, it could have been maybe, unfortunately, you know, a couple of kids, but maybe not the amount that were, you know, that were killed or injured. So, you know, I appreciate the discussion on the board. I think that's, you know, there's a few things that we need to take into consideration. As far as the effects on the children, I think the weapon will be concealed, and I don't know if they'll even know that he has it on him. So as far as the visual impact on it, I don't know how much it will affect the kids, if at all, because they won't know he's got it. However, I have 3 girls that go into these schools, so I have some say in this game as well as everybody else as a parent. I'm not just a board member. I'm a parent first. And if I know that there's a qualified guy, a retired police officer, that's going to protect my little girls when they go to school, well, I'm for that. And I'm not voting right now. That's all I got to say.
Since we're all checking in, I guess I'll check in too. I think the strength of this community is its tightness. Okay, I particularly don't like it a lot of times because there's not too many places I can go without being recognized. But that's our first line of defense: being able to know the people in the community and have the kids being able to come up and speak to us. That's number one. Okay, and number 2 is, you know, are we going to have an armed guard? Okay, you know, that's a decision that up here some people want feedback from the community, other people want to make it the board decision. Okay, you know, I sat here a year ago when we were going to reconfigure the schools and nobody was in the audience. And then we're going to act on it, and the next week we have a packed house. I don't want that to happen over this decision. Okay, you know, it was on the minutes. Well, you know what? A year ago it was on the minutes too. Okay, it caused a lot of people a lot of unnecessary stress. Where do I stand as far as having somebody armed? I think we don't have a choice anymore. Okay, now, is it one person in a building? Is it just a high school? Florida had an armed guard. Most important thing is who has the gun, not if we're going to have somebody with the gun. I mean, President Trump's going around telling, arm the teachers. You know, he says, I know, but I have to go there. He says, the teachers love the kids love the teachers. And, I mean, that's kind of like crazy in this area. All right. So where do we go? What do we do? Do we get input? Do we make the decision? There's a thousand questions. And I'm losing sleep on this. I don't want to be the one responsible for making this decision. Okay, as a board, I think we need input. You know, how do we do that? I don't know. But I don't want to see a repeat of the configuration over armed guards. That's where I stand.
I did just want to say something else. I know we're only talking about the armed guard situation right now, and that is a very isolated piece of the entire process. So, you know, and I know some of you know I already feel this way, you know, that is the final defense. I really believe that there's other pieces to this puzzle that need to be addressed. You know, one I know I've mentioned is more counselors, maybe training the proper people to identify these situations before they can happen, or the children that might be at risk, and intervening before we ever even get to an armed guard situation. So I just wanted that to say that, like, we're discussing this, but I think we also need to spend as much time discussing the other pieces of this too. And I know you and I have talked about it, Dr. Charleston.
Yes, when we get into the budget presentation and stuff, we'll be able to address a lot of the social emotional wellness issues that are prevalent in K to 12 for sure.
Anyone else? Okay. I have a bunch of comments on this. I don't think any one of us up here has an answer to this, and I don't think the public is necessarily shocked about that, because I think if you were sitting here, I don't think you would necessarily have an answer either. It is all about discussion, and I think all of us have different opinions, and different opinions for different reasons. With regards to input of kids, the kids are here to learn. The kids are here to play sports. The kids are here to be educated and have fun and be joyous. And I think it's the last thing that I would ever expect the children in this district to even have to remotely consider. That, to me, is beyond what I would want our children to even remotely have to think about. So as far as input from the kids, I have pretty level-headed children at 17 and 19, and I would, even as a board president, I don't want to ask my child what he thinks about that. That's not something that I feel that he should be concerned about. With regards to guns, I'm not a huge proponent of guns by any means, but I understand that there's an amendment and there's rights, and that this country and other countries in the world has lived with some form of protection going back thousands and thousands of years ago. We're never going to change that. With regards to carrying here, as Mrs. Meyer said, ever since my kids have been in this school, they've dealt with their officers in and out of the buildings that were carrying guns. Police officers come into our buildings carrying guns. Parents who have a permit to carry, as police officers and Mr. Cerisi said, are in and out of the schools carrying. So that's a reality, and that's a fact, whether we accept it or not. I think at times, knowing that, it makes my opinion to support having an armed person in the high school, because it's something that we've had. So to me, it's not necessarily foreign. I also recognize too that we could have 10 police officers or 10 armed people in a building, and depending on the scenario and the timing and where it happens, it may have no impact in assisting in a crisis. So we all need to be very open-minded that having somebody doesn't guarantee anything by any means. There may be a situation where it would mitigate, but there's no guarantee. So I definitely think, as we all do, each one of us, that there definitely needs to be more discussion. It doesn't start with the schools, it doesn't end with the schools, it's larger than the schools, it's gun control, it's mental health, it's a lot more than just 9 board members, whether it's Pequannock Township or Kinnelon or Hawthorne, making decisions. It is bigger than us, but we are in a position, we are reacting as every school district is, trying to do what we feel is in the best interest of the kids and the staff and our administrators and parents who are in and out of these buildings on a daily basis, because it affects us all, primarily the kids, yes, but there are other lives that matter that are involved in this. So I encourage you all, each of us, myself included, to really think long and hard as to, as we proceed with this, where you think you're at.
I'll just wrap this up. A couple things. One is just as a reminder to the board that the policy says that it's only for 1 year, right? And it has to be, would have to be renewed. So if the board were to decide for April 1st, then it would be for that 1 calendar year. And then you would have to decide in the following year. Yeah, once it's a resolution's passed, you can set the resolution to start July 1st if you want. Whatever the board were to decide. I anticipate that we will discuss this under old business next week again, and then I think at that point, if the board feels comfortable, that we should then decide whether or not we'll make a resolution for the second meeting in March, which I believe is March 26th off the top of my head, to make a final decision on that. So you have another conversation in public under old business. I did want to share. The board members have not seen this, nor will they see this. This is a site assessment report that comes from the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. This is for each of our schools. Each one is about 80 pages. It has pictures, it has highlights, it has things you need to do. We are going to go into executive in a minute to discuss. You got it? HIV and a legal matter. So 3 things. And we will discuss these things. So the 3 things we're going to discuss are things that we have in place, things that we may consider putting in place, and some of the big ticket items that were in here, which are really, really extensive. And those are some of the things that we'll talk about with our Director of Security, and the Requogue Township Police Department will be joining us.
You guys, everyone keeps saying just the high school, but it's not just the high school, is it? Because the Director of Security, first of all, I thought his office was at the middle school, and he travels, doesn't he?
Yeah, the Director of Security
So it's not like somebody's parked just at the high school.
No. So the
Okay.
Director of Security goes everywhere. His office is based at a PV, but just today I saw him in 3 schools. I saw him at the Hillview, SJG, and the high school. He's all over the place. He's here.
We're not just talking the high school, we're talking wherever the Director of Security.
Wherever he travels.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a consideration of executive session. It pertains to HIB and legal matters. No action will be taken. However, the other reason for executive session is tactics and techniques utilized in protecting the safety and property of the public, provided that their disclosure could impair that protection, or investigations of violations or possible violations of the law are also why we are going into executive as well. Again, no action will be taken, and our next meeting is on March 12th at 7 p.m. in the high school. Thank you for coming out this evening. Have a good evening. We need a motion to go into executive.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?